because we don't have the backbone to teach kids that there's a right way to do marriage and to do sex that leads to their joy. Instead, it's completely subjective, and you can completely do it however makes you happy. And we think kids that are 5 years old can change their damn gender at this point and can decide if they're male and female. It's absurd.
And my objection really to that point of view, though, is not that I don't agree with you in a lot of respects and would like to see that, especially just the willingness to fight and buck the state and the system and to stand up for what ought to be our prerogative as a community to educate our children. But in my opinion, it's more the issue is because even if that happens, then you still have many of these underlying philosophical issues that corrupt our ability to even think about education. So that's just part of it, but it is more like and I'm not saying it's not valuable to fight those fights, but there has to be some forms of kind of repentance on the philosophic intellectual level about what even is important to teach our children. What's the starting point? I would say the most Christian parents and most Christian teachers out here aren't any more informed about that, and it's not about necessarily teaching Bible stories in the school. I know that's not what you mean, but like whether people realize that. And what I would say, my angle would be more, no, we have to fight for the school vouchers and school choice options in order that our tax money isn't going to fund these things and to pull the money from that different angle. I know that becomes its own difficult fight, but I would say that is more crucial so that then we can establish the kinds of schools and be sovereign over the choices of our schools rather than give that over to the state, whoever, the local, even the local county. I'm not saying that we can't organize ourselves.
Dalton City is not Atlanta City, right? Dalton is not Atlanta, right? Whitfield County is not Fulton County, right? I can't go and actually affect change that will ultimately, I don't want Whitfield County, what we want, to be forced upon Fulton County. I'm not that guy. I don't want what Georgia wants to be forced upon Washington, D.C. or New York or L.A. I know that's what they want. They want to force their worldview on everybody. That's not what a Christian worldview is. Yeah. So the more
we think it ought to be, but we're not going to seize power to enforce it.
But the more localized something is, the more control or the more voice you have. I mean, I went to the central office. This is where this frustration comes from. I go to our central office in Whitfield County and I ask them, this is all I asked. I didn't want to change anything about education, although there's much that needs to be changed. But all I asked was, who do I talk to be able to teach an elective class in our community over certain subject matters, right? And it wasn't about teach the gospel. That wasn't what I was trying to do. I was trying to teach truth. I was trying to teach reason. I was trying to teach propaganda. I was trying to teach certain things that are just that are wholesome for the well-being of a person, right? Kind of what we were talking about earlier. And this was my response. Well, that's not us. What? Well, we don't have any control over what we teach in the curriculum. What? Like you can't even sign off on an extra class, like an alternative class that someone can come into we don't have. So the people in our community have zero say over what is taught in our school. Yet we pay 51, 52, 53% of the bill, whatever it is. Well, yeah, that's pretty much it. That is absurd to me. Like, that's absurd to me that we have zero say in what is taught in our school. No one knows our community like we know our community. Atlanta doesn't know our community like we do. Fulton County don't. Cobb County don't. No one does. So why in the heck, I'm getting better. Why in the heck do we have no say-so? And by the way, if we have no say-so and you're so worried, this is where citizens of Whitfield County got to get to the point of, if we have no say-so and they're so worried about state funds, how about we just kick back about local funds? How about we just start kicking back on property tax? Like this, we might not be able to kick back on the state, but hey, guys, why don't we create a group big enough that we go, you know what? To heck with paying property tax. We're not paying an increased property tax. We don't give a dang what you think. If you're telling us our voice don't matter, we're telling you you're not getting our money. Now we'll get the state to fund the whole show. Right? At some point, these are the kind of things we got to start doing to force our education system to listen to us. To force it to listen to us. And if you create a big enough group, you can create a big enough problem. And that might be what it comes to.
Well, the issue then is there a big enough group? Are there enough people, enough parents, enough community members that have the kind of worldview that see things as they truly are and see the problems for what they are?
And as urgent.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. And as serious and pressing and ultimately as spiritual. Like, this is life or death. This is a choice between God and not God, but not God is the enemy, the adversary that wants to lead you away from God to death. And the choice in considering our children, it has to be that clear. And I'm not saying always the options about what to do in the moment. We can hash that out. It can be a multi-pronged strategy, but clarity is what is required to get people motivated to see the issue for what it is. So, I mean, I guess to make decisive action in the moment, the fight, and we have this conversation all the time, but I think it's already too far gone. I believe it's too far gone for my children. I'm not going to put them in that environment. And if you read a book from these guys from the 1930s and 40s, it's too far gone for, almost 100 years now. I mean, this is not something new, actually, when we're getting at the basic assumptions and things behind what, guides our education system and philosophy. And
the only reason I haven't given up on the public system is because of my Christian values. That's the only reason. Now, just because Dustin says he's not going to send his kids into it doesn't mean that he hasn't went into it often in the past through Healthy Choices classes and being a big buddy, peer group leader, right? I mean, well, not big brother peer group leader, right? So we serve the public system because we realize they're not getting what they need. They're not getting what our kids are going to get. We would by no means send them into Sodom and Gomorrah, but we would stand on the outskirts of Sodom and Gomorrah and say, hey, there's a better way. There's a better way. Come try this way, because there's so many kids without fathers. There's so many kids without people at home teaching them the truth. And so it has become a missionary field. The public school system has become a missionary field. And for all you teachers out there that are, and maybe I got away with this because I wasn't worried about teaching. Like, I was like, whatever, if it happens, it happens. But for all you teachers out there that are scared that if you talk about God in school, you could get in trouble. When I was teaching for 1 year, and I won't name the school so I don't get them in trouble, but I taught for 1 year. And I was a special education teacher, and they would often ask me to come in and do a class because a teacher was out. And so one day, this happened a variety of times, but I'll talk about one day specifically. One day I was asked to go teach a geometry class. Dude, I ain't done geometry and I can't tell you how long. And I get in there, and this is a senior class, juniors and seniors, and I'm sitting here looking at it. Or it might not have been a junior and senior class. Anyway, it was geometry. I don't know. I ain't done that in a while. So I'm sitting here looking at this sheet, and she's like, you can just hand it out. You don't have to really teach the lesson. They'll know what to do. And I said, well, can they take the sheet home? And she said, yeah. And I said, okay. So I went in, I handed it out, and I sat down, and they were all sitting there. Nobody was really doing their sheet, right? So I said, hey, how about this? How about y'all put y'all sheet up, and we talk about something a little bit more exciting. But you got to promise me you're going to do your work when you go home there. Yeah, well, okay. What are we going to talk about? And I was like, how about the ethics of sex? And everybody, like, I don't know if you know, in this classroom nowadays, everybody's texting, everybody's got their phone, everybody. When I said the ethics of sex, kids went, what? Right? I mean, it was like immediate attention across the room. Right? And what I'm getting at is kids are starving for these kind of conversations. I mean, they're starving to have the truth and to be led into the truth. But we are so pathetic in our public school system, we won't do this anymore. And so I talked about the ethics of sex, but my starting point was, man, I'm probably about to get in trouble, aren't I? My starting point was that there has to be something true about the right way to do sex and the right way to do certain aspects surrounding sex. Because if there's nothing true, then sex is just whatever we want to make it, right? So you always have to start with what we've been talking about, the truth of things, right? And so I start talking about that, and we get into it, and we're talking about biblical. I'm literally saying this is the biblical way, and if you have a better way, communicate it to me. And we're going back and forth in this classroom, and I'm defending the biblical view of sex and marriage. And they're sitting here throwing things up, and I'm just defending it. I kid you not. 2 girls in that class, one on the front row, I remember it like it was yesterday. One on the front, 3 rows from the right, front row. One in the back, on about the 4th row from the left. Both of them are teared up crying and just fighting it because they're broken. Because the things that they're talking about, they realize that's not how they're living. And no one's told them this. And they're living this experience of broken sexuality. And by the time they're out of high school, they're ruined in their sexuality. Because we don't have the backbone to teach kids that there's a right way to do marriage and to do sex that leads to their joy. Instead, it's completely subjective, and you can completely do it however makes you happy. And we think kids that are 5 years old can change their damn gender at this point and can decide if they're male and female. It's absurd. And we're allowing our kids to ruin themselves because we have no backbone anymore in our school systems. And that's where we're at. And one of the girls, she walked outside and asked me if I'd walk out there, and I gave her my wife's number. Right? I gave her my wife's number. And so to pretend like this is not damaging our children and producing the type of soil that when they educate, now they go to college and they're polluted by the time they get out of high school because no one's taught them anything true. And for the love of God, now they go to college with all this freedom and they just continue to pollute the soil to the point that by the time they graduate college, they're so broken and so conditioned that you can't get through to them anymore without a miracle from God. And we pretend like it's just no big deal. But like Dustin said, there's no urgency anymore because you're not opening your eyes and seeing these things. Because the college experience is too much. We want to have a college experience. It's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing how out of touch with reality we Christians are. And the things that are so important are just not important anymore. And our kids are dying because of it. And like Dustin said, it's heaven or hell. It's with God or without. And we don't see that picture anymore.
Lord have mercy.
Yeah. I think I'm done.
I think I'm done too.
There's nothing left to say, right?
I think it would be better to, more appropriate anyway, to weep.
Yeah. And just to weep and beg for forgiveness for our lack of action and our passivity.
I mean, that's where where we're so willing in our will to be deceived and led away to please ourselves, that we forsake God along the way and then end up so far from Him that we can't find our way back. And so these are just all symptoms really of something that's gone astray long ago and more fundamental than our education system. But by God's grace, He'll lead us into repentance. There's power through the gospel to do that, and that it reveals why that's truly our only hope in this world.
Yep. And if you are one of those kids that I'm talking about, we are wide open, or if you know one of those kids' parents, we are wide open to sit down and disciple a kid that's been broken or counsel a kid that's been broken and help him walk through that. You can reach out to us at any time in one of our inboxes. I literally, that is my reason for being here. And part of my reason for being here in life is to help children understand their purpose. And so, and even kids up until this point in life that haven't been taught the truth of life, that have lived a broken experience in this pursuit of pleasure that's literally broken them, teaching them how to overcome that brokenness. Teaching them how to overcome that brokenness so that they can start to be restored and redeemed and walking in the path of joy and walking out the life and purpose that God has for them, so that they don't end up just being a broken person breaking people. I mean, that's our problem. It's just this it just continues to duplicate itself, because broken people break people. There's a reason why someone from a divorced family ends up being divorced one day. There's a reason why someone with an alcoholic father ends up becoming an alcoholic himself, right? Because no one intercedes for that person. No one steps in and fills the gap and goes, look, this has to stop. Somebody has to step in your family lineage, in your generation, has to be man enough to go, no more. No more in my, and it's hard. It's hard if you're out there to be that first person. My grandfather was that first person in my line. We were a bunch of alcoholics, and God forbid I'd been an alcoholic. I'd have been an awful human being. I'm bad enough without being an alcoholic. I would have been a terror. I mean, I have to already work on my anger and control. I can't imagine if you mixed alcohol with it. God knew that I didn't need to be a drinker, you know? And so it's just like, I mean, if you know those people, we're more than willing to reach out to us, man. We're more than willing to sit down with them, talk with them, walk with them. So I just wanted to put that out there.